Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Tembegile Felicia Makubele. Today we are hosting a guest from Zambia, all the way from Lusaka. You know, we're going international. And I will not introduce her because I want her to be able to do justice. That we will allow her to take us through her views about the topic of today, which is neglecting the youth when it comes to issues of leadership. Now will actually have some consequences in the future when it comes to them participating in leadership roles. And you'll hear as she introduces herself why we chose her as one of the speakers. Somebody was asking me, why do you go out of South Africa? Because this platform is actually not only for South Africa, but for Africa as a whole. And we believe that out of these discussions, as I've indicated in so many sessions, we are aiming to identify areas that we can improve as a continent and different countries within the continent, and also find collaborative roles or areas that we can work together. So we're hoping that Tapiwa is going to be able to indicate things that will allow the youth in the continent to work together. So I'll hand over to Tapiwa. Her name is Lukuta. She's all the way from Lusaka in Zambia. You are welcome, and welcome to everybody who is joining us and who has joined us, and those that are going to watch this video. We appreciate you taking time and talk to and watch our sessions. And thank you, Tapiwa, for making time. I'll hand over to you to introduce yourself, and then you go straight to the presentation.
All right, thank you so much, Tembi, and it's so good to finally see you. Looking forward to the day we meet physically, but nevertheless, this is an opportunity that I'm very, very, very grateful for. Sometimes as young people, all we need is a platform to be heard, so that our concerns, our issues, our burdens can actually be listened to. So very grateful for this opportunity. So yes, as mentioned, my name is Tapiwa Lukuta. I am a 22-year-old female, currently studying medicine at the University of Lusaka, and I'm also currently the very first female president of the Student Union at the University of Lusaka, which is a record which has been broken. So yeah, that's the main highlight of what I do. But besides that, I'm also the interim Secretary General for SAPSN Youth. So SAPSN Youth, that stands for Southern African People Solidarity Network, which is a network of CSOs across the Southern African region. And so a youth wing was just recently made following the SADC Youth Summit, which was held this August. So I was privileged to be the only student coming from Zambia to just air the views of students who are in the country, to those who might be able to actually do something about our concerns at the SADC Summit this August in Malawi. So yes, I think that's a bit of a background. What I do or who I am. I'm extremely passionate about leadership, but not in the sense that I'm a leadership expert, but in the sense that I really love learning about empowering people in a way that works. I'm also very eager to share the knowledge that I get from the exposure that I've received to my fellow young people and women as well, something that I'm really passionate about. And a little bit of activism. I'm still learning a bit more about the issues that I'm going to be interested in, particularly policy issues and governance issues. So yeah, I think that is a bit of the background. A deeper background about myself, though, Tembi, I'm not quite sure if you're aware of this, is that I'm actually Zimbabwean by nationality, but I was raised in Botswana for most of my life. So yeah, Botswana is actually where I had resided my entire life, and then I came to Zambia almost 4 years ago. And that's where I started my university, and this is where I've been living. So with just that background, the reason why I've shared this is to also make or bring to light the fact that for me, I identify myself strongly as just as a Southern African person, because I see our similarities as people coming from the South, even Africans in general. Our similarities are really more than our differences. So being exposed to all three countries, or staying there rather, has given me a lot of insight in terms of people culture, in terms of tradition, and in terms of where we are going in policy, in politics, sorry, policy or politics, in governance issues in our Southern African countries. I've also been to South Africa, not for a very long time, visited a few places there. So yes, I've been there just recently, Malawi as well. So I'm really, I would say, a pan-Southern Africanist. I am a pure pan-Southern Africanist. And yes, I believe so much in solidarity of our countries. So today, my topic, the topic that I've been given or tasked to talk about rather, reads that neglecting the youth now affects prospects of future leadership. So it's a very, very interesting topic that I won't take so much time unpacking because I really like for it to be interactive, but I will give my few cents about this particular topic that I've been given. So first of all, what I want to bring to light is the fact that one, there's a shift that has come, or there's a shift that we're experiencing as Africans, and especially as young Africans. And I'd really like to be optimistic and say this shift is one in which we are becoming more aware, right? So when I say we're becoming more aware, what I'm simply trying to say is that as young Africans, we are slowly getting to a point whereby we realize what our goals are. We are really now getting more aligned in terms of our goals, in terms of entrepreneurship. There's so many programs, unlike in the past, and like maybe a decade ago, young people now are being more and more exposed into issues relating to entrepreneurship and many other things that are really related to our fields of study. So there is a shift. It might not be experienced fully now, but I do see in the very near future that a lot of young people are going to be quite aware about their surroundings, about themselves, about development, about what's happening in other countries, because technology has made it very, very easy for us to do so. So now what we ask ourselves is, are young people actually neglected when it comes to issues to do with leadership? In Africa, in our African setting, which is what I believe the context of this talk is it's not young people being neglected as such, but I feel now what has come, or what is more apparent, is exploitation. I feel a lot of young people are actually, or as young people, we are being exploited in a sense. And I will explain why before anyone starts to get a little bit like, oh, okay, what did she say? But by exploitation, what I'm trying to say is that a lot of young people are being taken advantage of, because those who do, or where the powers must be, those who have powers and authority to actually make big decisions, have realized that we are the majority, right? More than 60%, 60 to 70% of the African population is young in general. But then now there has come that realization that, wait, these young people are empowered because they have knowledge. So it's very difficult to fool someone who actually has knowledge and they know what's going on, right? So obviously one of the tools of deception that we used back in the day, maybe for people to be manipulated and such by people who are in government and the like, was the fact that they leveraged on the fact that people didn't know, people didn't have access to information. But now when we look at the likes of Twitter, we look at the likes of Facebook, WhatsApp, and so many other platforms that have been available to us, it's very difficult for you to convince someone about something which is not true. So a lot of young people are really aware of what's happening in their countries, right? Politics is right in our face, and it's something that we cannot hide from, or something that we cannot avoid, rather. So with that being said, now with that realization that I feel that has come about, it's now an issue of how do we make use of these young people who are well aware of who they are, who are well aware of the advantage, the opportunities that are there for them, who are also well aware of any kind of schemes that may be done underground or whatever, because information is readily available to them. And I feel now what has come about is the fact that a lot of young people's needs are not heard, right? Not that they're neglected or ignored, but they're just simply like a deaf ear has been put to a lot of young people's needs, right? There's that sort of exploitation in the sense that if we look at, okay, in general, right? If we look at politics time, right? A lot of countries will be having their elections next year and the year afterwards, right? You find that a lot of young energy, a young potential is used or exploited. In these cases, young people are given, some money or something of that sort for them to support a particular party and to mobilize people. And who is mobilized at the end of the day? It's other young people. So you find that now young people are the ones who have been made to take the lead in terms of mobilizing people. And you find these people in Zambia, I'll give, because I'm in the Zambian context. In the Zambian context, maybe they're taking like a 50 kwacha, which is like 50 rand, I think, about 50 rand, okay, 50 rand, and we do this and the like. And that is a form of exploitation, because instead of addressing the real issue that young people have, which is economic empowerment, young people need to be economically empowered, you'd find that those who actually have the power. And we have been muted.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, should I continue?
Yes, please.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay, so I don't know where it ended.
You
but
were,
okay, I'll just,
yeah.
all right, so I'll just pick up from I think I might have dropped off now. Yeah, so basically what I was saying, that there's a lot of exploitation that is going around. So in realizing that we are the masses, and the masses are the ones that eventually will vote, and the masses are those that need to be led, there are ways or schemes that are being used to kind of manipulate that advantage, which is really sad in my opinion, because if anything, youth should be the drivers of their own economies. The economies are ours because we are the ones who end up living with these consequences of the decisions that are made by our predecessors. So at the end of the day, we are in many ways exploited. So one example that I can give is in student politics. So, and this is one area that I feel a lot of people tend to forget about, because student politics is very, very important. I got to realize this being a student union president. And even before that, just during my campaign, being the only female standing for elections, student elections at my school against six or five, there are about 6 males. A lot of there was just a lot of attention that came to me, and that was also to close to the general elections time here in Zambia. So what then happened was that, or what I experienced was that you'd find politicians, starting to approach me and say, okay, no, we will pay for your campaigns, we'll do this, we'll print t-shirts for you, all that stuff, obviously, and also give you a stipend or something of that sort. Obviously with the string attached to it, which was for me to campaign for their party, something that I refused, but you'd see that there's that use of student politics, right, or student politicians, or student activists, I'd rather say. So you'd find that universities have a lot of young people. This is where a lot of young people are found, because according to the UN, a young person is defined as someone who is between the ages of 15 and 24. And you'd find that at around 15 and 16, some of the people are done with high school. So most of this age range is the one that is harvested in universities. So you'd find that, politicians and the likes start to take advantage of that and use student politicians because they actually have influence. So that's one other sense of manipulation that I can talk about of young people and young energy, young potential. So now what will happen is these young people, us, who are not economically empowered. I was broke by the time of our student elections. I had no money. I was literally walking to campaign and all that stuff and raise awareness and the like. But it's in that moment of vulnerability, that moment whereby I had no resources, right? And I had all the right intentions, right? That these guys started to take advantage of that, or found it as a way to take advantage, to say we'll empower you in that way. So it's pretty sad, because now it comes down to the level of them coercing even normal young people who are trying to make a living, and that's how they become exploited. A twist to this exploitation and manipulation that I'm talking about is also, I feel, and I know that this might not be a very favored comment or opinion, but it's just my thoughts, right? Is after being exposed now to being in student activism and student politics, I noticed that not only, I feel like to a certain extent, politicians are not the only problem. I feel even CSOs to a certain extent, NGOs to a certain extent, are starting to also play a role in the misuse of young people's potential and energy. I'll explain why. Yes, of course, the NGOs that we're engaged with and the like, the big ones, have the best of intentions to raise awareness in areas to do with activism, what and all that stuff. And they also do have a tendency to target people like myself, for example, who are into student activism, student politics, and try to get them because they have influence. There is a set number of people who follow them, right? They have a good following. So you find that now the problem with CSOs is that when it comes to this young potential and young energy is non-governmental work has become commercialized. Activism has become commercialized. So now, because we're not economic, it all goes back down to being economically empowered. You'd find that young people now only attend these conferences, you attend these big summits, want to be seen on TV, want to be seen doing this. And this is not just your regular young person, but it's those who actually have influence, who can actually drive positive change in communities. And now also being trapped into this idea of being popular, of being famous and all that stuff, and getting handouts in the form of transport refunds or any other sense, or even t-shirts or whatever it is that they'll receive. And I feel that in a way is manipulating young energy and young potential, because now you'd find that activism has become something that's commercialized. We all just hashtag, we go on our phones, all that stuff. But what change are we actually doing on the ground, right? Are we truly, are these messages that we're raising reaching the people that they should? So I feel now, even CSOs, NGOs, people really need to rethink the way in which we are doing things, right? And ensure that we're actually doing things that are benefiting the community at large. So that's one of the things. Sorry, I have a lot to say, Tanvi. So yeah, so that's why I wanted to just talk on that issue of young people, young potential, and how it's being misused. I would say not neglected. I don't think that we're being neglected per se, but we have been seen, our voices are being heard, but then now what actions are being taken towards that? And our voices being heard, right? Are the right people listening to us, right? And also those who are on the receiving end, right? Have they gotten the right people to air out or to advocate for young people? So that's one other problem that we have. So just also on that, one thing that I'll mention is is culture, and it's just the general culture that we see in young people. So another thing is that when we talk about young people being left out, is that there are issues of politics itself being demonized, right? Especially in our African setting, politics has become really demonized. And I'll say this, and I think it has been actually for the longest time. And it's not society's fault, it's not culture's fault or whatever. It's because of people who have given a bad, what can you say, representation of what true democracy is, what following the rule of law, all those things. We have had really bad examples in our African countries, which has resulted in politics being demonized. So now you'd find that whenever someone talks about, if I am to talk to my young folk or my peers and the like, and well, guys, let's discuss politics and the like, you'd find that yes, there's a certain group obviously would be interested in talking about or in engaging in such a conversation, but then others now have seen it as something that's not even worth talking about, right? Because they have been disappointed, or we have been disappointed time and time again, by our leaders and those that we were looking up to at some point. So now politics has become something that's okay. No, let's not talk about anything else but politics. If you are seen to be someone who talks about policy, governance issues as such, there's a negative connotation that comes to that, and people already judge your character in a very stereotypical manner. Right. For me, I'll give an example of myself, where people are like, oh yeah, she's become a politician because I talk about issues that that people might seemingly be afraid to talk about, or I'm really quite open in terms of expressing myself and my opinions and views on such matters. So you find people are like, oh yeah, she's not a politician, of which there's nothing wrong with being a politician, but it has become packaged in such a wrong way by our African nation. So now we find that the interest in young people in issues to do with policy and governance drops, and now the engagement from young people would not be as responsive now when we call to them to act on certain issues, right? So that's one other factor that has come in terms of politics in our settings. So just this year, as I mentioned, this August, I was invited, as the only Zambian, not Zambian, but a student coming from Zambia, basically to represent young people. So I'm going there with the expectation that there's going to be something amazing. It's going to be big. It's going to be awesome. SADC, I've heard SADC this, SADC that, SADC that. I'm a medical student, sorry, by I won't say by profession, not just a medical doctor, but I am a medical student. That's what I'm practicing. So my exposure to policy and governance just came on this year. But so I went for the SADC summit. I'm like, oh my gosh, awesome stuff. I am going to just vent and say exactly how I feel, because I have a lot to say. So I was okay, I'm going for this. Let's do this. Let's talk about it. And at the back of my mind, I'm thinking, okay, so I'm going to be given a platform, or we as young people, I'm going to be given a platform to just air out our views, basically. And there are people on the receptive end who are in a position to help us come on common ground, right? And see how best can we solve issues of unemployment, issues of teenage pregnancies, issues of HIV and AIDS, and raising awareness, even on COVID issues. Young people really need to be at the forefront of driving such awareness and the like. So I had a long list of what I wanted to express and what I wanted to say, and I was super excited. I was like, okay, let's do this, right? To my surprise, to a very sad surprise, I get there and the heads of state have left, and I'm like, okay, so they've left. So what's the point? So they're like, no, it's just you guys, young people, the youths. We had the youths from across SADC, by the way. They're like, no, the youths were invited on the last day of which we came out, on the last day of the conference or something of that sort. Just a very obscure and unclear answer was given. But the moral of the story was that the heads of states came, they had their own discussion. As soon as they're done with their discussion, they left. Young people had their own discussion. So I'm like, how is this a forum? What do you mean by forum? These people are going to write communiques, they send them back to their countries, but they've not even heard the voice of the majority. And we all know that the voice of the majority is the voice of reason. So if you have not listened to the very people who are being affected by the decisions that you make, then what are you doing? It was so shocking for me to experience. It was shocking and very sad and very disappointing. I think I spent the rest of my 5 days there depressed, because I was like, is this what it means? Is this what we have been, are these the bodies that we look up to, even as young people, we hear about SADC, we hear about all these big institutions. Is this what it means? Is this what, when we say, civic engagement, this is what they're talking about? It's very, very disappointed. And now going on from that time in August, it has just been a domino effect in terms of my exposure in different programs to notice, and I've noticed that it's not a culture, but it's just the way it is, These people have their own discussions. They talk about what they think we are going through. And that's on one end. They have their conversations, all that stuff. And then we are literally just phased out. We're just literally ignored as young people, not given an opportunity to have that face-to-face, face-to-face conversation with them. Not only that, but give them the space and room to follow up on their obligations and to hold them accountable for what they do. Because, hey, at the end of the day, 20 years down the line, I'm the one who's going to have a family to take care of that's going to be affected by the issues that are being the issues that have been raised today. So like this ties back to what I mentioned to say, there's that additional problem whereby young people who have the voice, young people who have the confidence to speak out on certain issues, young people who are influential in their own circles, in their own spheres, are now also somehow being manipulated because they also don't have that economic empowerment. And now you find that it's a vicious cycle that keeps running because it's people like me, people who although I'm not planning to, but those who do actually plan to get into mainstream politics and now run for, the government and the like, they all started somewhere. They all started as youths. They all started as student activists. And now you find that vicious cycle in the sense that those same young people who have the potential of being your future leaders are being warped into this idea of them having fame. It's now all been just a show. They go, they take pictures, they're seen with the minister, oh, I've seen with the minister, what, you've been seeing all that stuff you post. People think you're doing something, yet you're actually very broke and you don't have money, you're not doing anything. And that's what people, are thinking, and it now becomes a vicious cycle. That person now will become your president one day, and they have absolutely no idea what they're doing, because at the end of the day, in their youth, when they were young and they had that potential and drive and all that stuff, it was all being misused. They were not actually going back on the ground and doing what actually really needs to be done. So I've seen, or I have noticed in this space of time, that there's that really sad, very, very, very sad and tragic vicious cycle that keeps going on and on and on. So on realizing that, like I said, my experience at the SADC Summit is very disappointing, but I really will applaud the civic organization, which is what we call the Southern African People's Network. So these are the guys who are responsible for bringing the civic organization to the table. But even still, even after bringing the marginalized women, the youth, the disabled, Eswatini, people of Eswatini, Temi, I'm sure you know what's happening in Eswatini. I'm very upset by that, by the way. Very sad things. All these other people were not even listened to. But then there was that network, the Southern African People's Network, which is the one that brought them on, which I think was a very good move and a very good move that has been going on. But then now on realizing that there's still that lacuna, there's still that vacuum, right, of young people's voices not being heard. We then proposed myself and other young people, some from Zim, from I think South Africa, Malawi, and the like. We came together and said, okay, there has to be a follow-up. Something has to happen. From here, we can't all just meet and go back home. And next year there's another summit. And what are these things for at the end of the day? So then that's when we decided to actually propose to SAPSN to say, can we have a youth wing? Can we have young people whose voices can actually be heard, for real, and young people who are genuinely concerned about the affairs of their countries and the affairs of the continent to lobby some of these things, and you being SAPSN and SAPSN being a direct, a direct link to the SADC head of state and the entire SADC institution. They can actually now voice our concerns, on our behalf. So that's how we formed the interim committee, which has been formed. And here and there, I think we have joined one of our sessions, we have discussions, that are around topical issues that are affecting young people and just Southern African people as a whole. So that's where we are right now. Hopefully this will transform into on-the-ground work, because that's what I am more concerned about, because the masses are on the ground and not on our phones. So that's where I'm hopeful that SAPSN youth people could go. I've spoken quite a mouthful, so I'll just end here.
Wow, thank you so very much. I'm gasping for air, and I think you have given so much light to the perception that the SADC youth is something that is actually making a huge difference when it comes to the things that, or the development of the youth towards them being leaders. You have actually dropped a bomb in terms of us now knowing. you said something quite interesting, that there is discussions about the youth without the youth. I'm just paraphrasing what you said. What do you think is actually the reason for that? Is it because they feel, or as adults, people feel that they know what you as young people actually want? What are those, from your observations and your experiences?
Thank you so much for that question, and I really like it because it's actually one component that I wanted to also talk about, and that goes back to, even though it might seem a little bit paradoxical for me to mention this, but it's African culture, right? It goes back to African culture. And the sad reality is, as Africans, we don't know where we stand anymore. Are we going to continue following our traditions, or are we adapting Western culture? So now Western, so democracy was it's a Western idea, right? It's a Western concept, right? But then issues of, in Botswana, they call it buthu, which is respect, right? Issues of respecting your elders, all that stuff is wholly African, right? So now we have a situation where this confusion now has been brought to the table. And young people are literally treated as they are, young people. So I feel that at the end of the day, you'll find that our, should I say adults, but decision makers, right, would see young people as being, or their voices really being inferior and insignificant, right? And they find us as just disgruntled people who just want to constantly complain, about certain things, and they're not willing to work. So now you'd find that even in an African home, if the mother is there, if the whole family is discussing an issue, maybe they have a bereavement or something of that sort, the young people are going to be chased out of the room because adults are talking, adults are having their conversation. So that's how we are like, as Africans, that's our nature, right? And it's a beautiful culture that we have. But then now, if we're going to, we just need to be decided on, are we going to go the Western direction or keep our African traditional values? Because in an African setting, in a Western setting, both voices are heard, right? It's all just a matter of what you're saying, what you're thinking. Are you competent? If we're going to talk about jobs and all that stuff, it's no longer about your age and the like. So young people, so Westerners are very liberal to that sense, whereby everyone is given that opportunity to voice out their concerns. But it's not the same here, because it's about respect. And I feel, and that's the bigger picture of things. So now as young people, they say, I know these people, they don't even know what they're talking about. Oh, they're too young to understand our issues. So what's the point of bringing them on board? So yeah, that's.
But I think the sad part is that you, as young people, you end up now losing interest, as you have rightfully said, and not wanting to participate. We recently had local government elections in South Africa, and the complaints were young people are not voting, they are not coming to the party, they are not. Instead, they are interested in the fame. How do we move away from that? Making them interested, making them, as much as they would not, you guys will not stop dancing, but the fame and the TV and so forth. But how do we make sure that you get interested in becoming or participating in the leadership, or the group, being groomed towards being leaders?
Okay, so I think this one's, I'd say it's a double-edged sword, because it's one thing, and yeah, I think it's good for me to mention this, to say, as young people, or yes, as youths, we really have a problem, right? So yes, there is that aspect of our voices not being heard, right? Or us being completely phased out and ignored. And yes, that's very true. That's something that's existing. But on the other hand, we have a role to play as young people. And one major thing is we have misplaced priorities as young people. So that's where now I feel, as decision makers, as adults, as people who actually engage these young people, they need to be aware of that, right? To say these are young people who have no sense of direction to a certain extent, right? So now it's not entirely their fault that they now start being more interested in the fame aspect, and all that stuff. But it's now the decision makers and those people engaging them aligning that energy, aligning that potential in a sense that is actually in a way that is very productive, right? I'll give an example of what's happening here in Zambia, or what happened in Zambia. You'd be surprised to know that in Zambia, one of the drivers, right, in terms of increasing voter awareness and all that stuff, were actually musicians, right? Although even on the backside, on the other side of things, that musicians now started getting involved in politics and all that like. But we find that the artists that young Zambians actually look up to, the likes of Wezi, if you've heard of her, there's also a guy called Kwame, there's a guy called B-Flow and the like. These artists were now engaged, right, to raise voter awareness. So now we find that as a young person, I'm looking at someone who already has fame, and it's someone that I already look up to, and I'm like, if he is voting, why shouldn't I? You know, he's singing about voting, she's singing about voting. It's just a beautiful thing that has, it's been packaged so beautifully, and I've got a very good example it's been made in a way that it's so exemplary for me to follow. So I think it's now the politicians and the decision makers seeing how best to align this energy. There's nothing wrong with the energy that young people have. There's nothing wrong with them wanting to jive or to dance or all that stuff, but see how it can be aligned properly. And you see that problem now is that the ruling parties, okay, unfortunately, in most cases, I don't know why, but in our African settings, we have a problem with the ruling parties that we have. But you find that those that are able to actually, who have noticed that, are the ones taking advantage of it, right? And they're the ones who are now taking that talent, right, and using it to their advantage to do these campaign songs, campaign messages, and the like, right? So now it's up to even those who are into activism, CSOs, NGOs, and the like, engaging people with the energy, streamlining it in the proper way to raise voter awareness, because voter apathy is very real, especially in countries like Zimbabwe, where there was a statistic, sorry, I've forgotten the exact result, but there was a statistic that was released to say that, or a research story that was made to say that the reason why actually the ruling party keeps winning is not because of rigging and the like, but it's actually because of voter apathy. Young people are not voting. So that's how they end up winning. So it's such issues now, seeing how can we streamline this energy, streamline it. It's good, let's not discourage it, but let's see how now, as a young person, I can inspire another young person with a song, you know, that talks about voting and the like. And yeah.
Wow, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got Tapiwa Lukuta from Lusaka University in Zambia, who is talking about the fact that youth may be neglected actually in terms of being considered for leadership. If you've got any questions, please, you can indicate by raise of hand or just indicate that you would want to speak. I see Mr. Mabovo, your microphone is on.
The hand actually.
Oh, okay, no, you can proceed.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. It's good hearing a young, energetic voice coming out so strong like this. I must say I was fortunate. I had a telephonic conversation with Tapiwa yesterday and engaged a little bit on what is it all about, and gave a little bit of our background and organization that I happen to be the executive director, which is Southern African Business Development Forum. And hearing her speak, Thembi, it's something which we as an organization has been trying to address in quite a long time, that young people are not given a right platform where they can fully express themselves or stretch their wings without being misunderstood, all right? Because there is that element of misunderstanding the young energy instead of helping that young energy and channeling it in the right direction. If I have to come back a little bit and to concur with your challenge, it's important as young people, when you embark in matters like this, to try and look at a little bit of our history as a region and as a continent, and find, starting from the point of colonization. We're colonized, right? And after colonization, There are leaders who stood so brave to fight that colonization, and that won us the independence. So now the winning of that independence came with, you are now governing yourselves, you've got the independence. And remember, when you are colonized, you don't have any rights. People use you for whatever reason they want to use you. They're exploiting. And the main reason Africa was colonized was because of her minerals. So you were not even supposed to take part in whatever economic activity. You were supposed to just provide labor as a slave in your own country. So winning that independence, now the very same people that fought as freedom fighters to win that independence took over to be government leaders and to be the administrators now of the country and to now administer justice. Now you're put in a very good point where the Western has said, let us have democracy, one vote, one person, one vote, and you should have a term of office, which is 4 or 5 years within which to run your affairs, right? So that created a problem where now the newly formed governments after attaining independence also had to drive economic development activities and try and include those that were marginalized and were slaves and were workers to now come into the mainstream. And as you run, you realize that 5 years has now come. That which I said I will do, I have not finished. So I need another term of office. So that's where the campaigns come in. So sympathetic to that is we understand that they didn't have much time. Let's give them more time. Now, power and managing a country comes with certain benefits, which are very nice. You are driven, you first in the queue and all those things, your weight goes. So there are those who now became aware that, oh, now when you are in government, it is a nice position to have. So for me to continuously stay here, it means those that I'm empowering, I must continually put them in a place where they will not lack much, but they will not get much, so that they continue to be my voting constituency, for me to be in power and for them to feel as if they are given something. So that is where now the lack of separation here, economic development and political leadership brought in that culture, that conflict. So let's fast forward to today. We have the African Union that has the Agenda 2063 and says, this is the Africa we want. And this is how we see Africa being. We want Africa to solve her own problems. Coming with that, they said, we have the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, because Africa has got arable land, so we want Africa to be mainly an agricultural-based economy. Now, following up that, is let's have an agreement, continental free trade, where African countries now trade amongst themselves. And all of those decisions were signed into by head of states and government, politicians, right, that are deciding on issues of business, that are coming back to create an environment that is conducive for business. So meaning government becomes a player and a referee. So what does that mean? Someone who has to participate is someone who has to be sympathetic to government. For government, because I cannot open up an opportunity and you use that opportunity to bite the hand that feeds you. Okay, so that lack of separation of these responsibilities of economic development and a political agenda, because we believe government and business must coexist, but they should not mix. You should have economic development driven by business, and you have policy and governance driven by government. But you can't have one without the other. So it's like a train. It needs these rail tracks to move. But where these rail tracks meet, the train won't move. So it means the economy won't grow. So if you look at the stagnation of the economic growth in Africa, it's mainly because of that. And what has happened over time is we use young people to vote and to attend to our political needs as leaders. Let me use South Africa as an example. You have within universities and institutions of higher learning all these student bodies, COSAS, for example, EFF student commands, Youth League, where you have political leaders going to assist these young people to campaign, and they are aligning with the manifesto of the ruling party or that political organization. But if you now look into the manifestos of these political organizations, are they aligned to the AU agenda? Are they aligned to the Africa we want? Are they aligned to the continental free trade? Are they allowing an environment where you will have a sustainable economic growth, right? So this is where we feel as an organization that we need to give youth this platform where we say, we are living in a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. Here are the challenges. And if you follow this route, these are the outcomes that will come. If you follow this route, these are the outcomes. Now, choose which route you will take. And if you want to follow politics, you need to know that politics is servanthood. You must be able to go in and create an enabling environment which will bring in peace and stability, the welfare of the people, and all that which is related to social development. Now, if you want to follow as business, you will unfortunately be a capitalist who has to be aware that it is not only about profit. There are people that will be working for you, so that brings in an element of social entrepreneurship. So how do the two interact, right? So that is what we feel it's not being offered to the young people. And your example which you used when you were invited to the SADC meeting is not something that was not expected. We have SADC that has existed for quite a number of years. It's Southern African Development Communities. But how integrated is the SADC region? How aligned are the social values of the SADC region? Do we have common infrastructure that links us as a region? Yet we have this body that is supposed to drive that agenda in the integration of the region, right? We have Africa as a youthful continent. Do we have a succession plan where we are saying, let us identify, for example, you, Tapiwa, who has shown interest in being an activist, who has to speak on behalf of others. Do we give a space and groom her to continue in that platform? Because you can tell that you now have someone, an activist in the making, who can now be grown, who can be mentored, and who can be guided to look into the aspects, the does and the don'ts, and things that she needs to be looking into, things to be aware of. Who is she aligned to? You get a point. So these are the things that I feel young people should be given, and that's what our organization seeks to achieve. For example, as young people, the question maybe that you should ask is, as SADC, what is our common culture? Because we have cultural diversity, but what is our common culture within SADC? Which when I open my mouth and speak, I know that when I say this, it will touch the nerve of anyone who is from my region. Because I have used this particular thing that is common amongst ourselves. So that becomes a point of departure, right? So that is what unifies us. Secondly, are we bold enough as young people to look at the long-term reward rather than instant gratification? Because I think we need quick results. The pressure of social media, the television and everything, you see people with beautiful hair and everything, and you come from a challenged background where money is a scarce resource. You see Jabu, who is driving a nice car, a family man, and you say he's a good sugar daddy. So he will provide for my 1, 2, 3, right? Forgetting that that has a bearing in your future, right? I used an example when I was in South Africa mentoring young people to say, now let us use this scenario. I will use you as an example, Tapiwa. You are my sugar girl, for example. 22-year-old, and I provide for everything. You finish your school, you start working, and you happen to date my son, because my firstborn is 29 now, right? You date my son, and my son, out of excitement, says, I want to introduce you to my parents. And you are being introduced to your sugar daddy. How does that? You get a challenge. So
Yeah, but
is it something that?
Don't you think it's one of those things that you are mentioning? This is for both you and Tapiwa, based on experience, Tapiwa, and you, Mr. Mabobo, based on having mentored young people. Don't you think that is actually because of the fact that issues of poverty are not addressed, which lead to these people now realizing that, okay, like Tapiwa was saying, they approached her and they were promising all these stipends just for her to be the face of their political party, something that actually happened even in, okay, we may not have...
No, it's something that happens, Tim. We shouldn't shy away from these realities. What I was driving at is actually addressing that the existence of our organization is trying to address that kind of a thing. That first and foremost, as an African child, when you finish your studies, you polish your CV and you apply for a job. You are not creating employment. So let us look, that's why I said, let's differentiate. Do you want to follow politics or do you want to follow business? And it is in business where you create an enabling environment for young people to generate their own income. You understand what I mean?
Yes,
so this is the mentoring that we are talking about, to say to young people, let me use an example, Tapiwa, at your institution. Where does your institution get food from?
In terms of?
Your food, I mean, you eat as students. Do you provide for yourselves, or do you have a canteen where you pay and the school provide meals?
Oh, yes, we have a canteen.
Yeah, and then you pay a specific fee and then you go eat there.
Yes.
But now, have students ever thought of opening up a garden where they plant and they have the school to be their client and say, this is where we want you to buy and have our food coming from?
No.
You get a point. So
Yeah.
this is that which we want to bring, a culture of self-dependence, to say, much as you are giving me this, I will not be happy with handouts, right? We are here, and I am a science student, I'm an agricultural student, so let me put what I'm learning into practice. Give us 5 hectares here, or 2 hectares rather. We want to make sure that the vegetables that are part of our menu come from here, and you'll buy from us. And this buying from us will knock off this amount from our food.
Okay.
So you have negotiated and you have that. You see, so these are the kind of things that we want to try and bring as a shift from young people's minds, to say, let us not demand. Let us not get microwave. If I use an example, near South Africa, you have a lot of young people who are members of a political organization because they are being given opportunities in government where they will have a lot of money, but to do the dirty work of their leaders. So for them, it's instant money.
That you was indicating. I just want to head based on what you have said, Tapiwa.
Yeah.
And also based on your experience as a campaigner to become a president within a university, without any probably interest of becoming an entrepreneur. How, as young people in your networks, as you said, you have now created network, what kind of discussions do you have? Do you invite this kind of speakers like Mr. Mabobo, who can be able to share information like that? Because I think changing the the way of relying too much on government being the provider would, to a certain extent, assist in making the young people realize that we can be able to sustain ourselves without relying on them while we participate. So what approaches do you take based on all the things that Mr. Mabobo has indicated in order to move out of being too dependent and wanting government to always, assist where necessary?
Thank you so much for that question. I have so much to add actually onto what Mr. Mabobo said, but then I think I'll start by directly answering your question. Firstly, I believe in self-development. I think self-development is very powerful because you can't give what you don't have. So on a personal level, I did come to the same realization to say that entrepreneurship is basically the way out of poverty. It's the way out of a lot of problems we are facing as youths, can be found. And personally, what I did was I've been signing up to a lot of youth programs and youth workshops that center around the issue of entrepreneurship to see how best I can also have something that can help me to generate income. Because in as much as you want to serve and all about giving back and all that stuff, you need transport money to get to where you want to go. You need clothes, So on a personal level, I did start to get into such programs. Then as SAPSN youth in that particular network, because it's still an interim, what can I say? We still have an interim committee. We have been having discussions in terms of how to empower people with such, because we also realize something to say, even in social media activism, like we're trying to raise activism through webinars, information sessions, and the like, the interest of young people to discuss issues that are very important is low. But you'll find that the moment that you incentivize that giving of information, people take interest. So we noticed that as well in our network to say, people only attend these information sessions if they know that their bundles are going to be covered or they're going to have some sort of funding or something of that sort. And we saw that, at the end of the day, it all boils down to young people not being economically empowered. So we want to now also shift and broaden our scope and not only raising issues to do with political policy and governance issues, but also empowering people economically and bringing people like him, Mr. Mabobo, on board to give a word or two to young people. But if you'll allow me to just digress a bit and go back to emphasize and give my 2 cents on what Mr. Jawe said, because I think he said a lot of very wise words. And they say a word to the wise is enough. So just to add on to what he said is, firstly, in terms of history, right, our African history, I think this is a crisis that we've been facing for the longest time, right, in post-colonial times, in the sense of going back to identity. Even when the Westerners came to colonize Africa, right, we were existing in monarchy states where you had a king, a queen, and the like. And power was hereditary, right? It wasn't earned as much, right? It was hereditary. And we're somehow thriving in that kind of setup that we had. Things were working well for us. It's unfortunate that now, after colonialism, there's just a lot of confusion that has come about. But I feel to a certain extent, I don't know, but I just feel to a certain extent that we somehow, from time and again, now confuse these two concepts. Now you'd find that someone who's in power, right, your president, wants to pass on the power in the way in which a monarchy would, right? So now they want to not only hold on to power, but when they pass on, they want to make sure that their families are set. Their families are set in this line of royalty, on which it's not the case anymore. We've moved from that to now true democracy is not like that, right? It's all about the voices of the people. So I feel that also plays a role in terms of how our leadership has become so confused in a sense. And then secondly, with what he's just said, I'll just reemphasize, is the fact that leaders themselves are confused about their own identities. They don't know whether they are entrepreneurs or they want to make money or they actually want to serve people. And I feel the mutual ground that both politics and entrepreneurship have at the end of the day is leadership, because in both cases or in both aspects, leadership plays a very, very huge role. So now I feel if there's a change that has to be made, it has to be made quickly, because this sense of confusion is coming. It has spread, right? Or it has diffused to young people, to a sense that we also don't know whether what I actually want when I grow up is to be famous or it's to actually serve people. We're seeing politics now as a money game, as a get rich quick scheme, of which politicians are not even paid that much. If you look at the pay of a politician, they are billionaires, millionaires who own mines and all that stuff, who earn way more than our presidents do. But then now young people have also started to adapt that sort of confusion. They don't know where they stand. And it also goes down to, young people like myself who are into student activism, not knowing exactly what we want, So I feel if there's a shift that has to be made, or a change that has to be made, it has to be made very quickly in terms of helping young people to realize, the difference and the importance of the two, that is entrepreneurship and leadership, and politics. To say that if you're into politics, it's really mostly about serving. If it's entrepreneurship, then it's about generating funds. Don't use politics as a game to generate funds out of people who are looking, for empowerment and searching for or who need representation. Very completely different things or completely different aspects. So I really would love if young people have to be, made aware of this difference or this distinction between the two. It really has to be made very quickly, because it has seriously intercepted into our culture. And just to also talk about what he spoke on integration as other countries. I also believe that you're very, very right to say that do we have anything that we share in common as other countries? And are we alive? Are we aware of those similarities that we have? For me, as I mentioned in the beginning, to say being exposed to these 3 different countries, staying in them, I have experienced, what Botswanan culture is like, and Zimbabwean, now Zambian, and I've learned to sort of analyze as well my environment and see. But what I have learned is that we actually do have inherent common culture as other countries. And one of those is, I feel generally, after also interacting with my friends from Kenya, I've interacted with friends from Cameroon and other young people from different parts of Africa, is that for example, in West Africa, right, it's really mostly about survival, right? Survival of the fittest. There's this need for them to always, they're constantly hustling, they're constantly fighting for something, constant comparison, constant competition, sorry. And it's not really much the same with us, Southern African youth. As Southern African youth, we tend to be a little bit more laid back. I wouldn't say it's because we're more comfortable, but perhaps it's because there isn't as much competition for even the basic resources. You find that countries in Western Africa are mostly overpopulated. And so there is that competition for even the most basic of needs, and that's how they've been raised. But even as Southern African young people, Southern African countries, I would say, there's a little bit of, I wouldn't say complacency, but complacency to a certain extent. It's very, very unfortunate for us as other countries, because we are not spared from poverty, and yet we have that mentality of being laid back, right? We don't fight as much. If there was a scholarship that was offered, right, between me and a Nigerian counterpart, best believe that my Nigerian friend would get it. and I'll say this unashamedly, because they have that culture of working hard and extremely hard and being extremely competitive, but it's not the case with us as Southern Africans, where we tend to be a little more comfortable, a little more laid back when it comes to certain issues. So I think it's also being alive to those features and characteristics that we have that are inherent in our culture as Southern people, as people from Southern African countries.
One of the questions that I'm having for both you and Mr. Bababo, because you actually mentioned the same thing, is the separation of the entrepreneurship and also the political side of things. A politician still wants to eat, right? And the entrepreneurial side would be more on profit. I assume actually that is how it is. The question is, how do we then make sure that in educating the young people and making them understand that being a politician is not a money-making scheme, is not a money game like you call it, and making sure that the culture of saving is instilled, because currently I think it has gone throughout the window. It's something that is no longer there, not only in one country, but almost all African countries. You will hear, like you're saying, survival of the fittest. The question is, how do we go back to basics and also understand that saving is actually a good thing to do? We don't even share anymore. We don't even look out for one another anymore. We build these high walls and make sure that we protect each other from one another. How do we bring that back? Mr. Mabova, I would also appreciate if you can also add from what she would have said as part of responding, because I think this is one of the crucial issue. One would say, why should I choose to serve when I'm hungry every day and I'm not sure where the next meal is going to come from?
Great.
I think Tapiwa can go first.
Yes, please. My answer will be very short, because I think this entire conversation would have come up with enough solutions to that dilemma that we have. I think going back to the root problem, feed the hungry young people. Let's solve that particular problem first. If that is what is affecting them mostly, because people are different, right? For me, serving is something that I'm very passionate about, speaking to people, all that stuff. I can do it on an empty stomach, sorry. But it might not be the same with my counterpart or my neighbor. But then what I think is, let's solve that problem of economic empowerment, right? And make sure that we quickly raise awareness. Like I said, we are really getting confused over this particular issue. So I feel, let's feed the hungry. Let's try and solve issues around that, right? And see how can they be empowered economically. Is it making your own business or whatever? Entrepreneurship is a world of infinite possibilities, right? So if we can make sure that we maximize on that, because it makes serving easier if that person is doing it, knowing that they've had something to eat. If I'll give an example of what's happening in Zimbabwe, right? So in Zimbabwe, we've got an influx of doctors that are being released each year, but all the majority of them are not going back to health. And yet we're told, in medicine, it's not about you, it's about serving people, helping people and the like. But now, we have to also realize that these are human beings. I can't go to work, and be cannulating and, doing all these other things, and yet I'm hungry. I can't walk to work. That is like thousands of kilometers from where I stay. So I think it's that issue of us making entrepreneurship and being empowered economically as important as it is to engage in policy and governance issues, and striking that balance, I think, could help solve that problem. Mr. Javo, you can take over.
No, thank you very much. I think, Tembi, it's important to understand that the things that you do with passion are different from the things that you do with what we call selfish interest. Why do I join politics? President Mbeki, if I have to quote him, in his recent address in the Chief Albert Lithuli lecture, mentioned that today a lot of politicians in South Africa have joined the African National Congress as a means to get rich quick scheme, as a means to solving their own stomach issues, not necessarily standing for what that organization or the ANC was all about, which is now serving as a unifier or as a what we call a liberation movement that seeks to address the historical imbalances. Now, entrepreneurship on the other side, we need to understand that from a Black person's perspective, we have seen business as that which we're exposed to. If you look at the majority of our Black parents, they are in informal kind of businesses. They are selling in hard, difficult conditions. They buy and sell in order to make families survive. And you have a child who says, I want to study hard and get a job in order to relieve my family from this difficulty that they are facing. So from that end, a young person sees business and entrepreneurship as a struggle, not as something that can be inherited from for generations to come, because that sector has not been formalized. You still see a mother sitting under the sun, conditions difficult, but they've managed to raise children that have gone to school, that have got better jobs, that have taken their mothers from that kind of situation to come sit at home. So I'm using that as one scenario. The second scenario, in South Africa, you grew up in a farm where you worked, your farm was repossessed by the apartheid regime, and you grew up working, and you were a child of a farm worker, domestic worker. So for you, you grew up wanting to get out of a farm, not knowing that that farm is a source of production where you can have generational wealth that is happening in there. So the point of departure should be in explaining what entrepreneurship is all about. Because a business is a legal persona which can speak, which can't write, and which can't think. It needs now a director that can think for it, write for it, and enter into agreements for it. And it needs a business plan for it to know where it is going. And then the director or the owner must now drive that particular vision. So we need to start from that understanding of what am I getting into, what does business entail, and what does it need to do, and where will I break even and start making profit, to know and understand the journey that we are taking. So for us, we see business as, whilst I'm looking for a job, I will be selling 1, 2, 3. And that's where we miss it. So we tend to say, I go into politics, there is a budget in government, and the government requires services. And in South Africa, we now have tenderpreneurs. Now we have the public, what do we call the personal equipment due to the COVID. You hear people that are being arrested because they were given tenders illegally. It was a get rich quick scheme. So whenever there is a government tender, there are those that are aligned to getting those tenders because the politician will say, carry my interest. So instead of building entrepreneurship where a lot of young businesses of entrepreneurship will be there to create a tax pool for government, where you will have a now much more broader resource base for you as government to pay the civil servants better, to pay the doctors better. And you as a politician, you already have a lot of benefits. You don't pay for quite a number of things. So your salary is not used for most of the things. You don't pay for your house, you don't pay for your car, you don't pay. So there is a lot of those benefits that accrue there. So that service already comes with a good package that makes you not look at any other thing but serve. Now, the civil servant who is there working, because there isn't a good pool where to work from, they will say to business, if you come do this and I give you this tender, I will want this kickback, because there is no ripple effect. It's still hard. There's what we call black tax. I work, I have to pay for my siblings that are there. So I can't enjoy life as a person who is working because of that. Whereas if I was an entrepreneur and I was guided, first 3 years of a business, I pick up, but after 3 years, you have broken even, you start realizing profit, bam, there you go. It's generational. So we need to start at this early age, have these kind of discussions and webinars and conferences where we say to young people, it is important for you to choose your career path whilst you are here. If you want to go into politics, like I mentioned in my introduction, these are the things that you will need to get into. If you go into business, let me just finish this thought, Tim. If you want to go into this business, these are the things that you'll have to go into.
No,
so I think that is, sorry.
I want to dwell more on that because
Yes.
currently no matter, okay, I may not speak for the other SADC regions or other African countries, but from listening to different people speak, I listened to one video where a Cameroonian was talking about the fact that people are obtaining degrees year after year. But when you look at the business or the private sector in African countries, they are not really at the level that people who are leading them with MBAs are actually having. The issue of manufacturing weapons, whereas people are having qualifications relevant to those, was actually been raised. Our health system is such that is not even something that not probably actually even including South Africa is not at the level that you can say that is reliable. Don't you think, even to you and everybody else that is attending, don't you think the issue of career guidance has been neglected, where young people will go into universities and just pick qualifications that are common or are well known or are perceived to be, generating quite a lot of money when they get into those? And is it not a bit late for them to be guided now, because there are already some of them at university like Tapiwa doing medicine, but her passion is on politics of people. So you already see a disjuncture in terms of the career guidance, which is currently not there. It's a long-term thing that we need to look into. But
it is a long-term thing, Tembi, but also to answer that in a much more straightforward thing, because when you say the truth, you get to be demonized. So unfortunately, we have to say, if you look at what was done, the colonialists created what I have termed educated slaves, right? So what I mean by that, if you look at the careers that are so glorified, where if you are qualified as one of those, you are regarded as a middle class, as being a doctor, being a lawyer, being an accountant, being a teacher, a nurse, a police, and all that. But all these careers that are important, right? But that which grows the economy, it's the artisanry work. Your bricklayer, your plumber, your mechanic, your welder, and all that. Those that are hardcore in that. But these others, it's social development. I'm passionate about developing young minds, sharing history, and guiding them. Now, the responsibility of government is making sure that as a teacher, you are remunerated well, because we have an equally productive economy where government can draw taxes from. But the reality is, if I use a South African context, those that drive the economy are not the black people. They are still, the economy is still in the hands of those that have colonized us. So if you say business, come, create, train, business does not have time to do that because it's profit oriented. It is, if a white term, not a driving school. So I'm not here to teach you. I'm here to say, come help me make more profit and in the process work. So we need to move into what we call social entrepreneurship, knowing that if I don't develop you and empower you, my business will not grow. Secondly, if I go and study engineering, for example, what is it that I want to achieve? Do I want to be an engineer? Do I want to go into business and all that? So if I'm an engineer, am I proud about the designs that I'm seeing in my country? Is there space for me to can dream and utilize that? Is the private sector aligned to the kind of output that they want from education? Because if the two don't talk, then the tracks of a rail that I mentioned will not move into a growing economy, because business is not getting what education is producing. So as a result, you get a lot of those that are supposed to be in social social services, now creating or turning that social service as a get-rich-quick scheme, because the other sector which is the economic sector, is not sympathetic to this part. For example, if I use now, how many people, when they finish their studies, get an opportunity for internship in companies that are around? You see, so these are the things that we are talking about. Are we still connected, Tembi? Hello?
I think she's facing some issues, but I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is what we need to look into in this reality. That's why I say our organization looks into doing that. And what I will commend or compliment the government of Zambia for, it's having entered into a relationship with our organization to say, because we said we want to turn Zambia into a trade, logistic, and tourism hub of the region. Because Zambia is neighboring 8 countries, plus 2 plus 1. The 2 is Burundi and Rwanda, 1 is South Africa. But it's also headquartering COMESA. So within COMESA and SADC, you have a market of over 550 million people. So on those 550 million people have to eat. Who feeds them? We are presently seeing a lot of produce coming in from South Africa to come and feed these communities here. Does that mean that Zambians can't produce to feed firstly themselves and the neighbors? Because they say charity begins at home. And then what we can't produce, get from that which is outside. So that is entrepreneurship that we need to build. And it is in here where we are saying we need to empower our young people, our unemployed graduates. Let us now start talking and saying, what is it that we can do together? Because as a young graduate, it is easier to reskill you than to train you in new something that you have not been trained before. So you become a trainer you train the trainer. So you are able to train other young people in that line that we go. So you have created a platform where young people now see themselves growing and supported by business, not by government. Presently, our governments are overburdened because even the forums and the convents and everything that we go to, in South Africa, Tembe, you will correct me if I'm wrong. Each and every small business or every organization, you will hear them use the buzzword, I've applied funding from government, but you want to be business. So you want the government to be a funder, a government to be a referee, a government to be everything. It is overburdening to government. What is it that you are offering in assisting government to be able to govern better? Because you are creating employment that relieves government of this overburden. Those are the things that are real. We need our leaders. We are the ones that have elected them to take leadership. So are we electing them and setting them up for failure? Or are we electing them because we say, this is what we want you to help us with? So that is a relationship. Say, I've put you in power because I want to explore business. But presently, there are these laws that are impeding. Can you, when you are in there, revisit these laws for me to be able to do this as business? That is bargaining. That is what business and governments are supposed to be doing. Not, I've put you in power. Now you must deliver. I want you to take me out of poverty. It's unfair.
Yeah.
It's unfair.
So,
Yeah.
Mr. Javu, just to just cut you short before I forget, what I wanted to say is I think you've raised very, very important points. And one of the things that I also just wanted to touch on is I feel that there is a way in which we can connect entrepreneurship and politics in a way to create what I'll call a symbiotic relationship where both sides are benefiting from this. So one example that I'll give from my context as a student and as a student activist with what I experienced was, imagine if like the issue that we have whereby student activists or politicians are being funded or have become politically aligned or affiliated, right, is really just mostly a matter of resources. So I'm imagining a situation whereby entrepreneurs are able to actually support such, student activists and student politicians by funding their campaigns. So imagine in a setting whereby instead of me being approached or being enticed, by a political leader, if I was funded, by an NGO, or was funded by someone's business, someone who already prints t-shirts, and they told me, okay, I'll print these t-shirts for you. All you need to do is to just be my brand ambassador, or all you need to do is to just advertise my company. If I did the same for another company which also prints t-shirt, flyers and all that stuff, and they told me, okay, just endorse our work, and that's the kind of relationship that we can have. So I feel that such needs to be explored. The relationship that both politics and entrepreneurship can have, needs to be explored. And that's a way in which I feel as our economies, our African economies, can actually thrive at a higher level, not just at the level that I've mentioned. And then another thing, is I feel the solution as well can also be found in young people, because it's one thing for us to say, no, we're supporting entrepreneurship and all that stuff. We've heard of all the talks, we've attended all the conferences, we've attended all the summits, we hear, but most of the time, especially with our leaders and what they promise young people and also other general civilians, is there's so much talk, but there's less of action. So I feel that one of the ways in which we could solve one of these pertinent issues that we have is, let's support the talent which is already there, right? There's a huge pool of young entrepreneurs who are passionate about business and have businesses that they're running and just need that financial push, or not capital per se, but just that push for them to take their businesses to a higher level. And these are the same young people who can then employ their friends, their 10,000 friends who are from graduating from accounting and finance and marketing and all these other things. So I feel one of the areas that can be explored is supporting the talent which is already there. It's so full. There are so many young people who are willing, to get into entrepreneurship and various other sectors, but don't have that financial support, or just support in many other ways. So instead of looking for it elsewhere and trying to create problems within solutions and the like, I think it would be a good idea to work with what we already have. And then also in terms of career development, which is what Tempe had spoken about, to say, there's that problem of confusion, and it's something which needs to be explored more. I feel that's very, very, very true. It goes back to what I said with us as Africans not knowing where we stand, right? We took up democracy, but then we still want to hold on to some African values and traditions. We don't know how to properly, probably have a mix of these two. And I feel one of the things is Western culture, if we're going to follow some Western traditions, or at least learn a little bit from what our friends do overseas, is that at a very young age, that aspect of exposure is heightened in someone, right? So even when you say, I want to be a doctor at the age of 8, there are so many opportunities around you that help you to touch, feel, see what being a doctor is like. But I feel that here there's a lack of making that making it real, for our youngsters, right? Taking them to the factory, taking them to these sites where there's engineering, taking them to an aircraft, taking them to see what an aircraft looks like, so that if they aspire to be engineers, they actually know what it looks like. They're able to touch, to feel, to see it with their senses. They're able to have that experience, even at a young age, for them to be more decided when they grow up. But then now we see a situation whereby it's all just obscure. The whole aspect of whatever we want to be when we grow up is just so undefined, and that's why there's so much confusion, because we don't even know what we're getting ourselves into. A teacher will just notice that, oh, this student is good in science, let them be a doctor, and then they start feeding you with that idea, but you don't even know what it means to be a doctor. You don't know what it means to be an accountant. So I feel that's one of the things that we need to explore further into, and that's one of the things that our network is also hoping to tackle, to make that experience real for people, to say, if you want to do politics or government, whatever it is, give them that opportunity to see it, to experience it, and not just from hearing. Yeah, so those were my additions.
Yeah, no, I think Tembi, for time's sake, Tapiwa, it's in the same city in which I happen to be, and I have her contact details, and I think I can offer for us to engage and take. I think we had discussed that, Tapiwa, that we need to look into, because the energy that is there needs to be channeled in a proper way, which is a cry that we are hearing. Secondly, let me qualify, because someone who has listened to this might say, I said the doctors and teachers are not important in the economy, and therefore I'm not promoting issues of good quality education. What I mean by that is those that are driving the economy, the artisans, still need bookkeepers. They need lawyers for contracts, right? They need doctors when they are sick. So you are having accountants that instead of looking for accounting jobs, they look for those small businesses of artisanry and say, I will manage your books because I am able to do this. So their relationship starts there. These people have families, they need healthcare, they need teaching and everything. So there is that relationship. So it is not only jobs that are coming in from you being an accountant in government and all that. So that's what I mean by that. So you are able to also have a cooperative of accountants that are saying, we will offer our services to A, B, C, D. You are having doctors that are saying, we want to open up a private hospital. And this private hospital will focus on A, B, C, D. And we will want to have that as our business. So, but as doctors, you are specializing in only healing. You are not accountants. So you are able to now partner with accountants that will do your books, do your tax issues. You'll partner with lawyers that will look into your contracts, because these days doctors are being sued for quite a number of things. So you need to be defended in that. So that's what we mean. So in short, I'm saying, as a Southern African Business Development Forum, we are headquartered now here in Zambia. We have a partnership with the government of Zambia to drive the regional integration program, where we say, for us to be able to trade with one another, there must be first an enabling environment. And we feel that is not the responsibility of government, but it's the responsibility of business in partnership with government, because government must create an enabling environment and must give the guidance and the protection and everything that makes sure that the investment is protected. So once we have created that, then it becomes the responsibility of business through their corporate social responsibility to identify the young people that they will empower to take over their business. Because business is about hereditary, it's about generations. It is not just when I die, then the business is down as well. So it needs to be inherited. So this is generational wealth that we need to create. So we have a point of departure. The advantage that is with the government of Zambia now's new administration is that it has come with new ministries. There is a ministry of green economy, there's ministry now of science and technology, and a ministry of small businesses. So they want to drive entrepreneurship. So are the young people aware of this direction where government is going and align themselves properly to that, right? To say, you have these ministries, what is it the ministry is offering for us? The ministry will offer 1, 2, 3, and then you are able to go in and say, this is what I need from you and all that. So that's what we are looking at. Have a conversation that is aimed at achieving common results. It must be a win-win. It should not just be one party benefiting over the other. So we are here to offer that service. We can engage with you. We can guide. I've been mentoring young people in South Africa through the National Youth Development Agency. I've done that for over 3 years. And the one thing that I've done was the integration. I'll use an example. There is a company that has been registered here in Zambia, Sibyl Technologies. It is owned by a South African and a Zambian. So I was demonstrating that you are able to have a business that is having a leg in South Africa and a leg here in Zambia. So you have indirectly brought in youth together. They are dealing with issues of business, applications, your apps, your websites, and all that. Someone is in SA, someone is here. So those are the things that we need to look into. Do we utilize our embassies and our high commissions to link us with their various economies? If I say, what is it that the Zimbabwe requires? I must be able as a business to say, I will supply that, because the ambassador from that end has told me that this is what is required. So who do I partner with? Are there youth in Zimbabwe that are producing that and are looking for a market? I have a market here in Zambia. So you are now cross-pollinating the ideas, but the businesses are well represented. And that's what regional integration is all about. It is not just focusing in Zambia as a country, but focusing in the whole region and integrate the region. Once we have conquered the region, we now say, what is it that we can produce and sell to the Western region, ECOWAS, for example, to the Central region or to the Northern region? So that is what I think we need to, yeah, we can. I think that is the direction that we need to take as young people and as young entrepreneurs, because the opportunities are huge, I can tell you. Let me use an example. Angola is presently getting her food from Brazil, and yet Angola is neighboring us here in Zambia.
I'll ask you to wrap up.
Yeah, no, I'm wrapping up. So I'm using it as a challenge to the young people to say, we are here, let us work together. I have offered myself, Tapiwa, take me up for the challenge and say, here we are inviting you to come and follow up on the discussions we had on Are We Transforming? You have my number and we can then take it up. And if I don't live up to my expectation, we have social media. You can go back to Are We Transforming and say, he just talks. It doesn't amount to anything. We are disappointed as we were at SADC. So I think that is now a good measure in which we can look at taking this process forward. I submit, Tembi, and I think, time is indeed up. Yeah.
Thank you so much, and my apologies for having been, I don't know what happened, cut off, because I could hear everything that was being discussed. I think, Tapiwa, this is an indication of the fact that in this platform, the solutions get identified, and I think this is one of those that will actually assist not only you, I think even the SADC youth can be able to tap into this organization, which has, without putting it in so many words, kind of partnered with Are We Transforming to be able to assist where they can in making sure that areas that are identified as gaps are addressed. Ladies and gentlemen, we have got Tapiwa Lukuta as we are about to wrap up. Are there any questions or comments? I think we raised a whole lot of issues that are going to assist for now people who are in Zambia, the youth that are in Zambia, to tap into what the South African Business Development Forum is going to be offering. Questions or comments? There was a comment that we were from a lady who left because of network, Noctula. She said you are the best, meaning that she appreciates the conversation that we have been having. From my side, I just want to say thank you so very much. It's just unfortunate that we were kind of cut off, but I just wanted to have an opportunity to wrap up and give the closing remarks. For me, the take home is the fact that there are areas that we have identified as gaps, like exploitation of young people not seeing a need to participate in politics because they have been demonized, activism being commercialized, NGOs now starting to also exploit young people because of them being commercialized, which is not, adding value towards building the cohort of leadership that would want to have going forward in different countries within SADC and also Africa. So I believe in your interaction with your colleagues as young people. And we're hoping that this video is actually going to encourage more to look on the brighter side of saying it is possible to participate in politics and not become the corrupt ones who bribe others to support their campaigns, but actually to be able to contribute towards leading our country to our countries towards a better Africa that we all want. I think for me, that is really quite profound and a take home. So I'd like you to give the closing remarks. Yeah.
No, thank you so much, Tembi. I thoroughly enjoyed this session, and I'm grateful that not only did I get the opportunity to speak, but I have a lot as well to go back and reflect on, a lot that I've learned as an individual. So I think for me, I'll just add on just 3 more things to what you already mentioned. The first one is noticing talent, noticing passion, and noticing young people who are genuinely passionate about certain things, and that is entrepreneurship and politics or activism, is very important in a way that, in the same way that Are We Transforming is doing. I think this is such an exceptional platform. The fact that you're able to, single out those who are passionate about certain things and then giving them the platform to speak. And not only that, but to also interact with decision makers and other very key and vital persons in our society. So that's a very big thing as well. And then the second point that I also wanted to say as a takeaway from this whole thing is the conversation on the mutual grounds that entrepreneurship and politics have, and the way in which these two aspects can coexist and in a way help to revive our economies as well and to transform our societies. Because in as much as we want good civil servants and good leaders, competent leaders, we also need to address the issue of economic empowerment, which is poverty is a very, very, very serious problem, which is affecting all of us, at the end of the day. So then I think this interview, this presentation really did emphasize on that point, or brought out the importance of finding that relationship. And then one other thing that I also want to speak on is solidarity. Being able to come together beyond just such conversations. And this is why activism is a very important thing in transforming, or be a very important factor in transforming Africa, is because it gives us the opportunity to now realize the similarities that we have as Southern African countries, maximizing on our talent, maximizing on our resources on the entrepreneurship aspect, and then coming together and seeing how can we all have mutual benefit out of these relationships. So I think small steps such as these, you being able to engage me all the way from South Africa and us having conversations in this way is a step in the right direction. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say, but I've enjoyed myself. Thank you so very much.
Thank you so very much. I cannot express my gratitude, and for you having taken time off your activities on a weekend, and for everybody who joined, I really appreciate. To Mr. Mabobo, thank you so much for always being available to provide help where you can, and to also provide guidance based on the experience that you have. I really appreciate. This is Tembegile Felicia Makubele, and we are on Are We Transforming, a platform that affords everybody an opportunity to speak and raise issues that will help us transform as the continent and also as different countries. Thank you so very much, Tapiwa. I believe that we're going to have a lot more of this and engagements with other colleagues of yours, and discuss more issues that will help us change the mindset and also the perception about leadership within politics or in countries from different people. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I really appreciate. You must have a very good evening and be blessed. Enjoy your Christmas if we don't see each other again. Stay safe. Thank you.
No, thank you so much, Tembi. Thank you.